Infiniti's television spot for its Q60 Coupe features Kit Harington, who plays Jon Snow in Game of Thrones, speeding through cliched car commercial corners as he recites William Blake with well-practiced intensity. It is an outstanding piece of highbrow marketing, clever and literate where so much car advertising is neither. It doesn't hurt that its star matches Infiniti's target demographic, minus a few years and gray hairs, such that those prospective owners might see the image of their best selves in the swarthy Brit. Yet, like many great ads, this one is a stretch. We have driven plenty of cars over the years that are exciting enough to make us wax poetic. This is not one of them. It's drugs, not infinitus, that make you start spouting blank. But before we call Jon Snow a know-nothing, it's worth considering that this class of luxury sports coupes is currently without a true king. This is an arena that has changed since Infiniti last launched a new combatant, the 2008 G37. At that time, BMW had a lock on the segment, but its current 4 Series has proved a disappointing successor, softer and less sporting than the 3 Series coupe it replaced. The Cadillac ATS Coupe and the Lexus RC have since emerged as a pair of upstart insurgents. Mercedes-Benz's new C-Class Coupe poses perhaps the strongest challenge, at least until Audi's new A5 and S5 arrive next year. Seen red. This gives Infiniti an opportunity with its replacement for the old G Series. The Q60 comes in 4 trim levels, starting with the base car, $39,855, powered by a 208 horsepower 2.0-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. The next step up is the 300 horsepower 3.0-liter twin-turbo V6, which starts at $45,205. At the top of the heap sits the red Sport 400, the model we drove here, a car named quite literally for the color of the S-badge on its trunklid and the power output of its uprated twin-turbo V6. The rear-drive version of the red Sport 400 starts at $51,300, with all-wheel drive available for an additional $2,000. On a dollar per horsepower basis, that gives it an edge, one that's borne out in practice. The V6 revs quickly with minimal turbo lag, and it makes the red Sport 400 speedy. It also makes a lot of high-pitched intake sounds without much exhaust noise. The Q60's sedan counterpart, the Q50 Red Sport 400, clocked 4.5 seconds for the 0 to 60 mph sprint in our tests, and Infiniti says the nearly 3,900-pound coupe weighs just 9 pounds more than the sedan. They share the same 7-speed automatic and gearing, so we expect equivalent straight-line performance. That said, the Q60's greatest weapon might just be its suspension. Dubbed Dynamic Digital Suspension, the adaptive system uses an unequal length control arm front and multi-link rear setup with computer-controlled dampers to deliver a compliant ride that stands out in this class for putting luxury before sport. The Q60 has stiffer springs than the sedan, giving the coupe a buttoned-down feeling even in the tightest curves on our drive. We went out of our way looking for some imperfect pavement but instead found a rutted dirt lane that meted out plenty of abuse. The Q60 refused to bottom out and emerged back onto the smooth tarmac impressively unscathed. Getting personal. The suspension has 2 settings, which can be toggled by selecting one of 6 drive modes: Snow, Eco, Standard, Sport, Sport Plus, or Personal. The first 5 of these settings gives you a pre-selected and self-explanatory combination of tuning parameters for the throttle and transmission, as well as the steering and a few other features. And then there is the rabbit hole of personal mode, in which the granularity of choice gets crazy, especially if you've opted for the steer-by-wire direct adaptive steering, or DAS, $1,000. With 3 settings to vary the ratio spread of the steering system, 2 of which have 3 subsettings that control the off-center responsiveness. DAS itself has 7 different modes. Combine this with the rest of the choices a driver can make in personal mode, and the combinations run into the hundreds. In fact, Infiniti proudly proclaims that there are 336 distinct possibilities for the tuning of your Q60. And that, to any normal person, is a problem. Even in more than 200 miles of driving, We were hardly able to suss out combinations of settings that seemed to work better than others. After a few minutes of toggling a single variable, attempting to reach a definitive explanation for what it did, we more often than not gave up and went back to plain old sport mode. At dinner, the engineer responsible for vehicle dynamics said he mostly preferred sport mode, too. But he also indicated a preference for the DAS system, which is now in its second generation on the Q50 and Q60. The engineers love this steer-by-wire system for what it can do. It allows them to tune greater variety into the steering feel to please a wider array of customers, but we find that it still can't mimic a really good hydraulically or electrically assisted steering system when it comes to feedback. After we briefly drove a car with the standard rack-mounted electrically assisted power steering (EPS), we certainly can't recommend DAS. Compared with the Q60 with standard EPS, the DAS-equipped car has a quirky feeling just as the wheel moves off-center. Tiny steering inputs on center that might be lost in a standard system due to tuning and the necessity to overcome friction generate real motion at the wheels with DAS, which can make the steering seem nervous. And the standard EPS feels better anyway, and more consistent, even if it is a bit overboosted. Late arrival. Driving dynamics are not the Achilles heel of the Q60 Red Sport 400 anyway, regardless of which steering system is fitted. Despite its new arrival on the market and a lack of sameness in its shapely exterior detailing, the Q60 seems dated. That's a byproduct of its shared lineage with the Q50, which made its debut in 2013. Inside, the materials and design don't compare with the class-leading Mercedes-Benz as much as they resemble the layers of mediocrity in the Cadillac. Many of the buttons and switches are cheap plastic Nissan items, and the analog gauge cluster looks as if it could have come from a Sentra. The cockpit is cramped for this class, and Infiniti's dual-screen navigation and infotainment system is illogical and difficult to use. It's unfortunate, really, that a luxury sports coupe that delivers such a complete mechanical package, with plenty of luxury and just enough sport, should be undermined in this way. But to sit on the throne, greatness is not required. Merely besting your rivals will suffice, and Infiniti again has a credible challenger. Did we mention that the Q60 has extremely comfortable seats?